What's up, everyone? Welcome to a new episode of Moving with Life. Today we're going to talk about my first experience and my first time going into the VA. All right. So moving on from the last episode, and pause the episode, but still finding there's a certain theme here that I feel is going to carry us for the next few episodes, as long as I'm able to do it. And so. As I'm recording, I just went to the VA this morning, and I will say my thought of what it was going to be potentially versus what came out of it struck a chord, and I'm like, okay, I think I could talk about this and hopefully shed some positive light in the VA and what it should look like and what it could look like for everyone as far as experience. And I didn't hesitate to at least submit my claim and go through the whole process, and now I'm going to start my care. And for me, I guess again, having maybe a low expectation has allowed me to now feel like, hey, this is okay. I'm okay with how things are going. But I've talked to other people. I've had friends that I've had conversations with, mentors that I've had conversations with, who they delay their want to submit a claim, their want to seek help, ask for help, and so on. And maybe it's because they were embarrassed. Maybe they feel like they weren't worthy, and all these things crossed my mind as I was just walking in this morning, right at about 7:45 or so. As I'm walking in, I'm looking at the signs and trying to find the correct department that little department / cubicle area that I'm trying to get to. I found it. I see it's to the right. I start walking, and I see this older gentleman in a red shirt, and he comes up to me, or yeah, not that he came up to me, we crossed paths, and he's like, "Good morning, sir. Hope you're doing well. The coffee's gonna be ready in a minute, for if you want some later on." And so, thank you, I appreciate it. And that was my first interaction with someone who is a part of at least the VA building that I'm going to be going to. And I as I was acknowledging him, and I appreciated him telling me that there's gonna be coffee. I read a shirt that said volunteer. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Like, that's cool. Like, I'm not a loud morning person. I can get up. I can get things done, whatever I need to do. But I don't talk much. I pretty much am pretty quiet for most of the morning until I start drinking my coffee or my energy drink or whatever. And so this guy was and he wasn't even loud or obnoxious or anything. He was the way I worded it earlier. He was warm and welcoming. Again, initial assumptions about what could happen to now my very first actual real world interaction at the VA. I was like, okay, cool. And it was super simple. That was it. And he walked on, went about his business. I went to where I was going to do, checked in, did my thing. And so that stuck with me. And I was sitting down, and I realized, again, kind of reiterating, but it was like, it just took that. So, hey, good morning. There's me some coffee. I'd never been before. I probably look lost. So, and he's been there who knows how long. I'm just gonna assume a little while. But regardless, it was my first time. Maybe he knew, maybe he didn't. He's been there for a while. Maybe he sees we'll say the regular as far as care. It's kind of bad to say. He's more situationally aware as far as patients that come in seeking help and with whatever they need on a daily basis. Because if he's there, 3 days a week, 4 days a week, 5 days a week, he probably sees some people more often than others. And then there's people like me that, brand new, I just got out, and so on and so forth. And I need a little help, getting to the right places, or in that case, like if I didn't have my own coffee, I could have gotten some coffee there, But very, very simple. And that was my initial interaction. That was my initial reaction, just completely changed, because like, maybe it's not so bad. The care itself, it wasn't anything crazy. I literally got some labs drawn, and I will say, 8 o'clock on the dot, they started calling names, boom, boom. They call my name. I go get poked real quick. Get done. Like, okay, we're done, and you have a good day. And that was that. And I was like, wow, it's pretty fast. And my thing was that they started at the time. There was no like, okay, people walking in at 8 o'clock to then start care. Let's say 8:03, and then when 8:03 wouldn't have even been bad. But at least from my recollection, 8 hit, and they started calling names, and that was pretty fast. I knew I needed to do this other thing in regards to the VA, and so I went to the information desk. She told me where it was. I think I waited literally maybe 4 minutes. Mind you, I feel like my demographic, my geographical location will affect my experience compared to, let's say, a big city like San Antonio or Austin, maybe even Corpus, because there's just so much more. There's so many more people. There's a lot of people here. I know there's a lot of veterans here in the area where I reside. But regardless of that, everything I needed to do was done probably in an hour or so, and I was like, man, this is nice. Again, and I am one to prefer no commotion. I said again in the morning, like I don't mind. I feel like I'm a morning person, but I'm a quiet morning person. It's like, you know, like maybe I'll have some music, maybe I have a podcast playing, listening mostly. As far as engagement and me talking, it's like I'll get there. Give me to like 9:30, 10 o'clock. And so, anywho, all right. So let me backtrack a second. So as I'm making my way to the second office space that I need help with, I get there, I read the sign, it says open, it says take a seat, please sign in, take a seat. And I was like, there's no window. They're like, is there an office space? Like, is there chairs inside that I wait into in the secondary office? I've been in hospitals that are like that, where it's, you go into the space, sign in, wait, and then they'll call you to the next actual cubicle or whatever. And so I was confused, and I was like, and I had already signed my name on, there's like a little sign-in sheet, and I already signed my name, but I sat down and I still look confused. I'm like looking for forms. I'm reading the little bulletin board. Well, this old gentleman, probably a salt dog. I'm just guessing. I feel like they're all salt dogs. It was. I appreciate them. So it was just like I felt like I'm in the company of all these gentlemen who did their time as well, and my respect for them and all the things that they did. You know, no matter how big or small they think it may be. But this guy, old man, a little kind of longish hair, grayed out. He's like, hey, did you sign in? I was like, yes. He's like, okay, they'll call you in a second. And he walked off. And that was it. And I feel like in a regular clinic space, doctor space, they wouldn't even do that. And he didn't have to do that, but maybe, just maybe, he saw that I was confused, I was very unsure of, okay, I signed in, like, do I actually just wait outside for them to call me? You know, how do I go about this? But nonetheless, he spoke up. And that was my reassurance. So then I sat down. I was there, waited a minute or two, and then I got my stuff done, and I was done for the morning. I got to leave the VA. I think in total, I spent barely an hour total of the two things I needed to do, and that was it. That then led to me thinking, how many times, and I'm myself included, it's like, how many times do we walk by and not see maybe someone that does need help, and maybe they want to figure out themselves, which is fine too. It's like, you know, you go to Walmart or Lowe's and you're like, oh, do you need help? And you're like, no, I'm fine. And you just kind of, you know, you just acknowledge that they're gonna try, that they might like to help you, but if you don't want the help, you don't want the help. And so, but it still hit me that he didn't have to do that. And so for me, I tied that into, you know, the first point of being approachable, or being the approacher to that person that might need help. And in this case, you know, with the VA and other veterans and new veterans that are coming along like myself, where it just takes that little second of like, hey, he's that gentleman that helped me real quick just by telling me that, hey, sign in your name, sit down, like they'll literally be with you. Even that 5-second interaction, it didn't take but 5 seconds. And it made me think about, if we, even for me, and a person who would rather not have a full-blown conversation in the first thing in the morning, It doesn't mean if I don't, it doesn't mean that if I observe something, I have to, or just because I don't want to say anything, then I'll be quiet in that given circumstance, right? But those were my first like 3 interactions with the VA, and again, totally changed my perspective, because it's like, well, if this is the worst it gets, and maybe there will be time where I will have to wait for a longer period because of whatever I have to do outside of that my appointment or whatever. Maybe it won't be as quick as that, but I knew they opened at 8, so I wanted to get there 15 prior, which if you've been in the military, or if you're in the military or any type of job like that where you usually have to be, or you prefer to be early to work. In the military, it's kind of normal, but because of hearing stories about like, oh, you wait there forever, and there's a bunch of people and you have to wait, you're waiting in line, so on and so forth. It's like, okay, I'm gonna get there early, and we'll see how it takes. We'll see how it goes. And so all that tied into wanting to come today. I'm like, man, I need to at least give my perspective to the best of my ability, because hopefully, because why does it matter? Like, why does this episode matter? Because again, I feel like the social verbalization of how the VA is, and people's and prior, veterans, their own experience of like, man, I have to wait forever, or I have to wait 6 months for this referral, 4 months for an X-ray, whatever that looks like. And maybe it does take long, because obviously you have so many providers, you have so many facilitators, providers and facilitators that have to cover X amount of people. Maybe those wait times do exist. It's just, it might not always be like that. Again, I'm not talking about San Antonio, Austin, Houston, some of these bigger that probably have multiple VAs in the city, or branch clinics, so on and so forth. But if I can leave you with anything today, it is, if you are a veteran, hopefully this might give a little positive feedback to, hey, the experience might not be too bad. You have the expectation of getting there early, like you would on a normal work day. Hopefully that allows, again, there's so many circumstances, because there's like handicapped, disabled, there's multiple disabilities. I saw plenty of, veterans that were in wheelchairs that were there, and but the nurses would help them move into the space quicker, and so on and so forth. So again, as simple as it seemed for me, it's like, if the goal is to be like that VA clinic that I get to go to, and if I happen to have that experience 9 times out of 10, it's like, well, that's pretty good. That's not bad. Does the system the system as a whole need help and more manpower? Probably. How that all works, I don't know. But I just know that if in the future I find myself in a place where I see someone that's confused there, particularly at the VA, I can at least ask them, hey, do you need help? I've been here before. If not, and again, it goes back to what I said this last episode, where it's like, if you ask me a question, I'll give you an answer, or I'll help you find an answer. There was an information booth right at the entrance, says information on it, and there was a nice lady there that I asked my question, she helped me, and that was it. It would be the same thing moving on to this next person. If I happen to see them confused and maybe they're too timid to want to ask questions, or ask where they need to go, or so on and so forth, I can be just that quick voice of like, oh yeah, it's over here, or I'm not sure, ask, the information's just right there, she'll help you out, she knows where everything is. So in conclusion for today's episode, my first VA experience, it showed me that it doesn't take a lot to be nice, and I know it left me grateful. It really left me grateful, because again, my assumption is 10 out of 10 of these guys are salt dogs, and they've seen stuff, and they went to go do stuff whenever they served, and they're here seeking some help, wanting to get some care. Then seeing the staff all across the board, at least in my purview, my view around the clinic, was everybody was helping, everybody was just collected. Because I was gonna say calm and collected, but I mean, actually, last point that I'll tie into this with this conclusion is that no one looked like they didn't want to be there. And I think that's what left me with just a positive, grateful experience. Is that the nurses that were there, they called your name, they did what they needed to do, and they went on to the next one. But even in the 2 minutes that I'm in that chair to get my blood drawn, there was, I don't know, there was no malice or like ill feeling anything. And that's nice. And I didn't, again, till right now that I'm talking out loud, it's like, and maybe, and who knows what's going on in their personal life. We're not going to go there. We're not even going to speculate. But at least I didn't feel like, oh, this lady's annoyed, or this person's annoyed, or they're there, and it happens. Maybe you're having a rough day, maybe you're having a rough morning. My dog made me spill my coffee or whatever, right? You're having a rough morning, and it just kind of ruins your vibe, ruins the start to your day. And there was none of that. Like literally zero. And so, if you're a veteran, if you're getting out, if you're on your way out, whatever that looks like, and if you watched it, if you made it this far down into the episode, I encourage you to. It's a little bit on the front end, and you'll know, you all will know what I mean in this verbiage, in this way I'm saying it, as far as paperwork and the initial appointments to do your disability claim. There's some paperwork on the front end, but it's not hard. And I have a feeling, at least where I go down here, and if you all are from down here, South Texas, where I'm at, I encourage you to go. If you're not from here, I'm lucky to have friends all over the U.S. now. But if you're on your way out, if you're out now and you haven't, at least try to get the help that you may want but not want to ask for, or need and not want to ask for, whatever that looks like. I'd like you to make yourself go. Pull yourself mentally to go, because that's another thing is, I know I do it. I create stories in my head all the time of like, oh, how will this experience, whether it's a person interaction or going to a new building for the first time, it's creating this story in my head of like, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna have to wait all day, and there's gonna be a long line, and who knows if I'm even gonna get helped in a decent time. There's other things I want to do today. I don't want to be here stuck all day. And creating that type of feedback loop, and it's for myself too. I'm saying these things here because it's stuff that I know have definitely gone through my head. To then I got off my truck, I walked, and I was like, boom, 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 and it was like, huh, okay, this experience may not have to be bad. And with that, if someone who works at the VA if this happens to stumble upon anybody like that, hopefully there's a way to move into a direction that at least makes the building seem collected, and everybody's there to accomplish kind of the same thing, which is care for veterans, and then we move on with the day. And so my second conclusion, think about it like this: I can do it on my own. I can do this on my own, i.e., healthcare. I'll take ibuprofen and Tylenol and I'll be fine. When you've had this issue for 10 years, 5 years, 1 whole year, even then I will argue, it's like, okay, maybe it's just a little sprain, but it shouldn't last you that long. Maybe something else is going on. And this is me not giving medical advice, but I'm just trying to tie in the dichotomy of, I can do this on my own, or I'm fine, I'm okay, versus, hey, I want to encourage you to go seek, to go inquire about the help that you can get. And hopefully your experience will be just as solid and just as collected as my has been. And we'll see what happens. You know, I have more appointments coming up, so we'll see how that goes. But yes, you can do it on your own, and yes, I always strive to be able to do things on my own. Or if I have when I was in a hospital and there was a patient that we needed to see if they could do something on their own. So I had to let them. I.e., let's say drink water. Can you hold the cup and drink water? If the answer is yes, I'd like you to at least try. Now, if something happens where you're immobile and you can't use your hands and your arms and something's going on, obviously, yes, I can help you, someone can help you, so on and so forth. But it's the balance of, I can do this by myself with, hey, it's okay to ask for help. And it's a journey for myself. I'm really not trying to preach to the choir. But as self-reliant, as, again, even tying in teamwork with individual, like the last episode, it's still the same and dichotomy of independence with interdependence, which is individual and teamwork. And so hopefully, if you're in a situation that is not as good, hopefully the system with the new Secretary of VA in the seat, I've heard him on a couple podcasts, you know, we'll see what really happens. You know, obviously it's not hard to be skeptical about the whole situation, but nonetheless, hopefully we see systems changes to benefit more veterans at one time. So with that, thanks for listening. If you've made it this far, I think today probably went a little long. I'll see in post, but even if you're not a military veteran and you feel like you need to do everything yourself, there might be something going on in the system that has led you there, and it shouldn't, depending on the circumstances and the nuance and so on and so forth. But if you feel like you're stressed out or have anxiety because you feel like you have to do X, Y, and Z by yourself when there's like a team or other people that could potentially help you, you should inquire about that. And I'd be interested to have a conversation about it, even if it's an email or on social media, YouTube, Spotify. There's comment sections all over the place with these social medias and videos that as we release them, you know, you can comment. And I always leave the X and Instagram handle, which is at Andy_MWL. The email is podcast.millennial@gmail.com, which is all in the show notes. But even if you weren't a veteran, because this point is that you don't always have to do everything alone, and you don't have to work alone. It's just the system that might need to be changed a little bit. And if the answer is, well, this is the way it's always been, it's a terrible answer, and I'll leave that for another day. But if you tell me that this is the way it's always been, it's a wrong answer. Because if this is the way it's always been, you're struggling, there's something wrong with the system. As far as I'll go with that. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening. I appreciate it, and I'll see you next episode.